Today I wanted to discuss why are Christians stressed? You feel stressed, I feel stressed, different times, different ways. Since COVID, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I just want to talk through a little of it. I know we've heard a lot about it already in dealing with anxiety, but I think that it's still helpful to get a biblical perspective because we've got a lot of ideas that are not, um, you know, biblical. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. Up until 2022, I was doing pretty good. I was running or doing intense hit training like 4, 5, 6 days a week. I didn't miss days. I was eating a lot of good food. I was juicing vegetables like almost every day, and I was blending. So I was always getting 9 to 16 servings of fruit and veggies every day. I was getting what I needed. But I was also doing bad. I was putting a lot of, I'd eat a whole large DiGiorno's pizza and say, well, I need this because I need energy for my workout. I'm doing a heavy workout today. So I'd kind of balance it. And I don't think it was good for me, but I was doing both. So I was living really intense. I was full-time job. You're doing 8 hours or more at the job. I have my family. You got to spend time with your family. Um, I'm in ministry, so I'm doing 2 sermons a month. And when I do a sermon, typically I like to devote like not a particular time, but like 40 hours of research in order to make sure I know what I'm talking about when I go out there. So it was kind of intense, but it was my escape as well because I love doing research, especially with the Bible, seeing how the scriptures connect and the history behind it and the cultural aspects that you don't really hear about. Those things, they excite me. So I put a lot of time into the sermons, even though the sermon is only going to be 30 to 45 minutes. Nobody really knows what goes into it. So in addition, I'm in school. At this time, I had graduated from Moody Bible in 2020. And then 2021, I immediately hit the ground running on a master's degree at Knox Seminary down in Fort Lauderdale. I was taking it online, and there was just a lot of work, a lot of reading. And what I'm trying to show is that my life was full. Oh, and I was teaching a Thursday night Bible study every night for our church at that time. And we'd have, you know, 10, 15, 20 people on Zoom who would show up, and we would go through like the whole book of Genesis, over like a whole year. So I was teaching that for about 3 years, but I was maybe a year into it at this time. And I would prepare 3 or 4 hours a week of research just for Genesis. So remember now, I'm full time job, full time family, part time school, part time ministry, both sermons, and other stuff, and then you got all your other stuff in life. You got to buy groceries, you got to, and I'm exercising, that takes like an hour to get that done. So I have no free time. I'm up at 6, 7 o'clock. I hit the ground running, and then I'm working till like 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock sometimes, just trying to get everything done. And it didn't feel stressful. It just felt like, well, this is life. This is okay. This is just how it works. I have a job. I'm well taken care of. I have a home. I got nothing to complain about. Everybody's safe in the family. I mean, we're just in a good position. But I was just going 1,000 miles an hour, and it was a lot at times. But I just felt like I should do it because I can do it. And I think in America and in our day and age where there's technology and we're presented with the ability to do a lot of different things, I think that we assume just because we can do something that we should. Just because you can go to school online and take 5 classes at once, you should. But why? Why do you have to be that intense? Why is that necessary? So maybe those are questions we can ask ourselves. Do I have to get this done? This year I plan to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes back to back. I'm going to spread them out across the whole year. I never do that. I never do that. Um, so maybe I won't take that many classes, but I want to get the degree, but I also want to learn what I'm learning. I don't want to be one of those people who has a degree and can't talk in depth about what I've learned. I can only give you some surface level treatment of the subjects that I've covered. Nobody, it doesn't benefit anybody just to have a piece of paper. So I want to learn about God in ways that I have not yet learned about Him. And Knox Seminary has been very good. So was Moody. Knox Seminary is just one level up because it's master's level, so it's really good. I don't want to waste that time by trying to rush through to get a result and look back and realize I missed my time, right? So let me go back to 2022. 2021, I'm living crazy. I the first time I had an episode, I was I was on stage as a guest preacher at another church in Murphy, Texas. Their pastor was out. A guy called me up and said, "Hey, can you fill in?" I'd never done that before. I said, "Sure, yeah, that's great. I've got my PowerPoint presentation. I know what I'm going to talk about. It's my favorite, one of my favorite sermons." And he says, "Oh, by the way, you'll have to do it twice because there's two services." And I was like, "Oh man, I've never done two at once." Oh, and by the way, it's going to be on Facebook Live. Oh, great. So so anyway, I get ready, I go in there, and I'm not wearing a mask or anything. And the reason I'm not wearing a mask is not because I didn't feel like I should protect myself, but I didn't want to be looked at like an idiot. I always feel like you're that one guy and everybody stops wearing masks, and now you're still wearing the mask, and you feel like people are like, oh, he's one of those people. So I, I just didn't want to wear the mask. And I was in close proximity with these people trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to stand there and I want you to plug my computer in because I got a special PowerPoint. It won't run on your software, so you got to switch it out while I'm praying and then display that, and then I'll be on camera, and then I'll just start talking. So we get all that situated, and I go up there and I do the first sermon. It's great. I'm working with the people. I got my clicker. The slides are going. I'm engaging with the people. I feel like God is helping them. He's helping me. It's a great experience. I get off the stage after we pray. We're done, and I go to the next phase. And so I'm drinking. I'd been off coffee and caffeine because it was getting to me. It was like I was getting really sensitive to caffeine. It was jittery even on small amounts. So I drank about this much coffee, like nothing really at all. Matter of fact, I'm gonna drink something now, but this is green tea. Still caffeine in there, but not so bad. So back to the story. I'm getting ready for the second sermon. I had a little bit of coffee. The worship team is leading, and I'm standing on the front row, and I'm literally just a minute or two away from walking up there, and this feeling comes over me, and it feels like you're going to burst. It was like it wasn't just jittery, it was like I can't like I gotta run through a wall or something. It was like I can't just stay here. I'm not okay. I don't know what's wrong, what's going on right now. And I was like, Jesus, you gotta help me. I mean, I'm supposed to go up there and give a sermon and talk, and everybody's gonna be looking at me. This is the one they're actually gonna record for Facebook Live, and I'm flipping out at this point. But nobody sees that because I'm just standing there thinking. My tongue is dry, my throat feels like it's closing. I don't know what's going on. And I'm praying. And then boom, I'm just kind of, surreally walking up the steps, and I turn around, and I'm just like it's just not okay. And I'm standing there, and I got my PowerPoint, and I hear them yelling at me from the back, use the handheld mic, because for some reason this microphone here on my chest was no longer working. They didn't know why, but they just said that that's what we got to do. So I was distracted all of a sudden from my problem, and I go and I'm on camera, and I know that, and I'm like six sentences into my sermon, and I grab the microphone and I'm playing with it and testing it and everything, and I forgot what I was worried about. And as soon as I forgot that, the sermon went, and I got comfortable. I forgot about my problem. I remembered my material. I'm going off the PowerPoint, and I delivered it, and it was great. It was great. But I looked back and I was like, what happened in that moment? what happened? It's like an anxiety attack or a panic attack or something. I mean, I was 2 seconds from running out the front door with my, hands up in the air. So I didn't get an answer on that, and I kept the fast-paced living. Now that's 2022 in January. That was Sunday. Monday I wasn't feeling good. I did all my I was okay. I went to some friend's house, ate Chipotle, lots of salt, everything. I come home 9 o'clock at night. Hey, I don't go to bed till 11. I'll do 45 minutes of burpees and get my heart rate in the 160s. So I'm doing that, and I just kind of feel different this time. I feel like flushed. I feel weird. And I did the exercise fine. It was, my heart's doing its normal job. Everything's fine. I sat down. I drank some echinacea tea for some reason. I never drink that. And then I decided, let me just check my blood pressure. I bought a pump 3, 4 months before, tested it a couple times. Whether the numbers were high or low, I never cared. It didn't bother me at all. I knew what high numbers were, but I didn't know if they mattered. So I go in the room, I sit down, and I check the pressure. And the pressure says 173 over 113. And I knew that wasn't good. And I was kind of, like I jolted, and I was like, oh man, okay, I just need to kind of calm down and relax. So I'm breathing, I'm relaxing, about a minute later, I take it again. 176 over 116. It doesn't go down, it goes up. And I kind of feel like you're going to die. Now, what made the number worse was that I already didn't feel good. I felt flushed, like something like the life is kind of coming at you slowly, and I didn't know what it meant. So I was like, I just got to calm down and get in bed and go to sleep. And that's what I did. I took my shower, I went there, I forgot the problem, went to sleep, woke up the next day, faintly remembered it, but I didn't worry about it because that's kind of how I operate. I'm not like obsessing about that. I'm kind of like wherever we're at right now, that's where my mind is in most cases. So time goes on, and that's the next day now, and I get a sore throat. So now I go to my doctor, and she says, let's test you for flu and everything else. And she comes back, and she's like, oh, you got COVID. And I was like, oh man, I got COVID. It was like, all right, we're on this roller coaster. I had not had COVID at all. And so this was really a new thing for me. And I was nervous. My wife got COVID. My daughter, who was around us, she never got COVID from us. And I remember about the fifth day into it, I was playing the piano in my house just to kind of pass some time. And I felt funny in the top of my back, like where my lungs might be. And it just was like this weird achy feeling. So I went on the CDC website, something you should always do if you feel that you're going through anxiety and you want to get some calm. You go to a CDC website, right? Just a little joke. And it says COVID typically hits your lung function between day 5 and day 8. And I'm like, oh man, I'm at day 5. What if my oxygen starts going down? I started to kind of spiral. I started to think, I'm okay, but what if this gets bad? I don't want to be intubated in a hospital. And I was like, I don't want to be, I don't want to lose lung function and capacity. And things just kind of started to tighten up, and they kind of stayed that way. And I was nervous. And I remember my doctor telling me, sleep on your stomach, it'll help you get more air like that. And I did that anyway, so it was fine. But we came out of COVID, and I was very depressed. And I didn't take any special medicine. I was eating kind of as normal, and I was worried about my lungs a lot. And then I remember I got back to work, and I started that same busy routine again, like just a couple days out of COVID. I'm starting again, and I drank green tea. I wasn't even drinking my coffee, and immediately, as soon as I hit the stress of work, and I saw they need this, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do it all? It happened again, just like in the church service where I started to kind of lose it. That started to happen, but now I'm in the comfort of my own home. Now I'm worried about, man, what if every time I have to respond to a situation in life, my body shuts down on me? And I got scared. And so I checked my blood pressure, and it was up. It was like 180 over 100 and something. I was like, that's really high. And I got nervous. So I ran to my bed, I laid down, and I began to shake like uncontrollably. And it was like, now you're in a panic attack and you don't know what to do. You're afraid. I felt like Is my artery going, is it tightening up? It felt like my neck was getting tight, and it just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. And I didn't know how to calm down. I just thought those numbers in that blood pressure machine tell me whether I'm going to live or whether I'm going to die. So I go to the ER. There's a small ER by my house. We get in there. I tell them what's going on. I told them I might still have COVID. I don't know. And the lady starts yelling at me about the fact that you came here. We don't treat COVID patients, all this. And she's making my problem worse. I need you to give me medical attention because I think I'm going to die or have a stroke. And here you are telling me I shouldn't even be here because I got COVID or whatever. So they put me in a hospital bed. I'm sitting at the edge of the bed. The doctor comes in, the nurse comes in, that same lady. She puts the blood pressure pump on my arm. He's asking me questions. She's testing the pressure. My pressure now is, she says she screams it out loud, right? So this is like something in the movies. It's not like this peaceful, calm, we're going to take care of the patient. She's like, 219 over 121. And I knew those numbers were like horrible. And I'm looking at the doctor and he says, and I said, could this be from COVID? He's like, it could be. And I said, can you help me? And he says, yeah, we can help you. And I think I'm in an emergency crisis. So I start to lay back on the bed. I'm like thankful that I'm in the presence of a doctor who can help me. And he says, oh, no. You got to go back to the front and you got to fill out all the insurance paperwork and demographics and all that. And then we'll come back and see you. And I'm like, what? Am I not about to die? And you're telling me to not lay in the bed. You're not going to treat me until I do all my insurance information. So I go walk around to the front. I'm nervous as you couldn't believe. I'm fumbling with my insurance card and my ID, and I'm filling out this paperwork. The person behind the counter, they got that nonchalant attitude, like they just don't care whether you're here or not. They're not here to really help you. They're just waiting for their lunch break. And I'm filling out the paperwork, and I already told my wife, call our doctor, see if she can get me the blood pressure medicine that she told me if I ever have an issue, she would get it for me. So my wife is handling all that. And I'm fumbling around with this paperwork, and I'm thinking, if I was about to die, why would they have sent me to fill out this paperwork? Is it that serious or is this not that serious? Questions. So anyway, my wife texts back about 10 minutes later into the paperwork, and she says, your prescription's at Walgreens now. We can go get it. So I said, you know what, I'm just going home. And I put the paperwork there and I just walked out the door. I was just frustrated but fearful. We get in the car. I cock the seat back. I'm laying there. I'm like kind of afraid, and I'm just like laying there. And we get the prescription. I take the pill, and then about an hour or so later, pressure goes down. From that point forward, blood pressure was my God. I paid attention to the number. That number told me every day if I was going to live or die. It was a terrifying experience, and I now had something that I feel like the devil was able to use to say, I got him. I got him focused on this one thing, and he can't live unless this is answered. Oh, you can pray to Jesus, but you need that number. Jesus is fine. Go pray to him. But make sure you come back and watch these numbers, and you better react when you see these numbers. And it was the worst year that I had had health-wise in a long time while I didn't actually have a health problem. Think about that. High blood pressure is not a medical condition, they say. It's just a risk. And this is not about high blood pressure. I don't want you to think that. But here's the point. I start taking these pills. The pills aren't really good. I'm now having nightmares all the time. Like, these aren't normal nightmares. These are like nightmares that you feel like you've already died and gone to hell. You're like, or you've died and you're like stuck in the tomb, in the ground or in the wall, and you wake up in the tomb. It's like bad stuff. And you wake up and you feel like God is nowhere near. You're reading the Bible. Don't worry, give no thought for your life. And you're like, I don't feel it, Jesus. I'm just, the sun is bright outside. The birds are singing and you don't hear any of it. You're just stuck. Like, you're just mentally stuck. Horrible experience, just a bad feeling. So I began to research the solutions because the pills aren't working. I can't wait to get off these pills. And, you know, I start doing my research and, potassium. You need potassium. So now every time I would have one of these crazy spikes and start flipping out, I would run to my juicer and juice like 10 potatoes and get like 4,000 milligrams of potassium, boom, all in one dose, right? Now, here's what I learned. Every day I'm now checking my pressure and it's perfectly normal in the morning. I'm sitting at 110 over 72, sometimes 98 over 62, just like really good numbers. But in the afternoons, I would have these spikes. And it was all because of cortisol, because I was worrying and stressing myself out. So in my mind, what I was doing is I'm so anxious, and my body is telling it, we got a problem. He's anxious. We have to produce these chemicals so that he can fight the problem that he's facing. Now, there's no problem. It's all worry in the mind. It's all stress. It's all what could be. What does this mean? How bad could this get? What if I don't identify all the pieces of the puzzle here, but what if I can't put them together fast enough before, before I have a stroke? Like, how do I solve the problem? Because with the blood pressure, that can cause the stroke, right? My father had a stroke and it debilitated him, and I didn't want to go through that. So the problem is you got to stay calm to bring the blood pressure down, but my anxiety is what raises the pressure. My inability to stay calm was the problem. I can't even fix the blood pressure on my own because of my state. The pills weren't knocking it out. I'm taking all these pills, right? And the pressure still spikes and goes up to these numbers. And I'm thinking, why am I even on these pills, right? So I'm going to cut this short on that because I want to get to some of the other points. So I'm excessive with the foods. I'm juicing like crazy. I'm trying to get the potassium in me and trying to knock out the salt. I'm monitoring everything I eat. The cortisol is jacked up. And by the way, if you deal with cortisol, sometimes you can get a flushing sensation. Sometimes you might not feel that. But for me, that's how it manifests. I get a flushing sensation. Sometimes my pressure is high, and sometimes it's not high. Sometimes the cortisol's just there, but my mind isn't worried because I've been dealing with it so long. I kind of know it's just that. It's not a medical emergency, and the pressure's not bad at all. It's in normal range. Anyway, so I'm eating all these foods, and so I want you to remember I'm eating a ton of sugar, coconut water, eating like 5 oranges at one time. No normal human does that. I understand that, but I'm not normal, so to speak. So I I'm I'm trying to do everything I can to solve my problem. Okay. Um, I come across a couple books. This book is called, by John Kabat-Zinn, Full Catastrophe Living. It wasn't a bad book at all. It wasn't a bad book at all. And I listened to the guy because he has a stress clinic. People have strokes and heart attacks, or they just passed out at their job and then they needed to deal with their life. So they come to his stress clinic. And in that clinic, he tries to help them identify, why are you angry? Why are you nervous? Stop living in the future or in the past and live in the present. There's this one story about they took a raisin and it took them like an hour to eat one raisin. They studied it. They felt it. They meditated on the raisin. What does the raisin mean? What is this raisin? It's what's in it? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Then they put it in their mouth and they don't eat it right away. They just kind of, I smell its aroma. I feel it. And then I taste it. And then finally they eat it. And they all say, that was the most satisfying raisin I ever had in my life, because they were present in the moment, right? I think God wants us to be present in the moment. I don't think the end goal of this book is to get you connected to God through Jesus. That's not the case at all. So I wouldn't recommend the book from that stance, but it is insightful for some other ways about how you can kind of calmly breathe and relax for like 30 minutes a day, thinking about nothing, not trying to meditate on forces that are, the stars or whatever like that, or, but just kind of just not thinking about that constant flow of problems. And I think it's helpful for that. Paul was content in any situation. He says in Philippians chapter 4, he says, "Not that I speak from need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances that I am. I know how to get along with little, and I also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me, right? Paul was in a Philippian jail. You remember that from the book of Acts, chapter 16, with Silas, and they're praising God. Now, we romanticize that. We think that's great, but we miss the point here, right? These jails are nasty and filthy. The city sewage would often run through these jails, right? And sometimes it would bulk up, get blocked up, and the level would rise, and you'd be waist deep as a prisoner in pure filth. Just urine, fecal matter, you name it. Just imagine it. Other people's stuff soaked into your clothes, so that even when they get it, unblocked and it flows through, it's still all over you, drying into your flesh. It's disgusting. And Paul's singing praises in a place like this. He's clearly demonstrating that what God has done in him is greater than the situation that's trying to overcome him. When the Philippian jailer hears this and the earthquake comes, God sends an earthquake and the doors open, and everybody would have naturally ran out and escaped. The man's going to kill himself, the Philippian jailer, because he says, these people are in my care by Roman authority. If I don't take care of them, if I don't make sure they're here, they're going to kill me. So he's going to kill himself. Paul says, don't do yourself any harm. We're all here. This man sees the love of Jesus because he's saying, wait a minute. Everybody in here hates the Romans because you're in jail in a Roman jail. Why would you care about my well-being? Why would you be singing praises to your God in the most adverse circumstances? Well, it's because Paul is thinking, if God is good and if God is all powerful, then it's okay that I'm here. This is good for me. I don't know how, I don't feel it, but I'm content because I trust my Father, and this is the situation that he has left me in. It results in that man's salvation. Paul's satisfaction with his horrible conditions has led his praise to echo in the man's ears, causing him to ask for salvation. What if Paul was complaining the whole time? There would be nothing to reflect in the man's mind that he's praising his God or that there's any God, real God present in the situation. So that's a huge testimony for why we ought to be content, because it pushes the purposes of God along in our lives, and people see the light when we're content in whatever situation we're in. We're not anxious. We're not stressed out because we're okay with where we're at. Now, it's a battle for me. It's just like it is for you. I'm going to move on to another verse now. Matthew 11. Matthew 11. This is Jesus. This is an initial call to salvation for all those who have been burdened in the first century to find God, but through the lens of Judaism, which was really blocking God from the people and giving them rules without relationship, is one way to put it. Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is comfortable and my burden is light. Jesus at the cross took all of your sin. You weren't even alive yet to commit the sins. Those sins you weren't even alive yet to do were on the cross. Your past, your present, your future is forgiven. What are you worried about? What am I worried about? How can I feel guilty for sins that are forgiven? How can I worry about going through a judgment that has already fallen on Jesus at the cross? Everything's paid for. Now, should you go sin because it's all, forgiven? Well, if sin hurts God, if sin is against God plan, if sin angers God, if it makes him uncomfortable, if it's not good for him or for you, why would you do it if you love him? If he went to that extent to save you, to become a man and die for you and raise again, why would you treat him like that? We should love God enough not to do that. But I'm not going to get into that. The point I'm trying to get at is he's carrying your burden. He's already carried it. What do you need to do in life to get by? He's got the answer. You just follow Jesus. You don't have to figure it all out. He's carrying your life in his hands. Now look at this picture. Jesus is carrying this weight that nobody can carry, and the little boy has Jesus carrying it for him, but the little boy doesn't understand that he doesn't have to help. Jesus doesn't need his help. He doesn't need your help and my help. So the boy's stressing himself out. He's tired and burdened because he's trying to carry something that Jesus is already carrying. You and I are worried and anxious over things that we don't need to be worried and anxious over. Jesus is carrying the load. In final thought, I just want to remind you that you don't have to worry. Jesus has taken care of you. I don't have to worry. It's the hardest thing not to do. We don't have to be anxious. Let him have your problems and practice and pray for the grace to be able to see life the way he sees it so that you can play your role and he can play his role. He doesn't need you and I to play his role. He asks us to play our role. And everything is going to work out in the end, right? So trust Jesus.